Bad Movies Revisited. Now, what this is I basically look at a movie that everybody pretty much agrees sucks. And I kind of think, well, does it really suck as bad as we think it does? So the very first one I'm going to do is Speed Racer. Now, this movie came out almost exactly 10 years ago. Okay, so we're talking about May 2008. And at the time, it was an unbelievable disappointment. The Wachkowski brothers standards, which, all right, think about the time set that they were in. First, they made Bound, which was their first movie ever, which is great. It's a lesbian noir film. If you haven't seen it, you should seek it out. Then The Matrix in 1999, which blew everybody's doors back. Okay, now that year it was supposed to be all about The Phantom Menace, which is another disappointing film that we might get to later. But The Matrix was the blockbuster everybody was really talking about. That was the 90s version of Star Wars, if you really think about it. Something that blew everybody's minds back and expanded it. Then The Matrix Revolutions and Reloaded, and people really didn't like those movies. Now, all the Wachowski brothers movies, we can say, have been divisive. Cloud Atlas, Matrix Reloaded, Matrix Revolutions. So everything that they've done since the first Matrix movie, many people hate it. A few people are very devoted to it and love it. Cloud Atlas was my favorite film of the year that it came out. I think it's a lot better than people give it credit for. It took a novel that is unadaptable almost, which is 7 storylines that first they go forward in time, they stop and go backwards in time, and all use different languages, different plots, but the core essence is freedom versus oppression, and that plays out in all the things, and they made it beautifully. They cast the same actors, had them play different roles throughout time. People didn't like it. They called it, whatever. I mean, they just absolutely hated it. I don't think a lot of people got what it was, really. They didn't understand it, and there was a lot of things that were critical of that movie that I feel like, okay, you're really missing the point if you don't like that Halle Berry plays an Asian, and it's all about reincarnation, and you don't get it. But anyway, that movie's got its fans. The Matrix Reloaded, the second Matrix film, and the Matrix Revolutions, the last Matrix movie, a lot of people are disappointed in those, but they have their own fans, people that say you don't get the religious context. And once again, Agent Smith is this devilish conformity figure. It's about oppression. He's trying to literally make everybody in the Matrix like himself, and the human beings and the freedom fighters that are fighting against that, they're against that. So it's the classic Wachowski themes in all those movies, which are freedom versus oppression. Now, the film that nobody defends, which I'm about to, is Speed Racer, which has those same themes, but what they do is they twist it in a totally random and different way, which is, usually you think about the Wachowskis, you think, okay, they're transgender, and in The Matrix, everybody's wearing black leather, and Bound, almost the same thing, and Cloud Atlas, I mean, there's a lot of gender fluidity, and there's kind of like these new school values, and it's all about punks, kind of going against the 1950s version of conformity. Speed Racer took their normal formula and almost inverted it in a way, which is, the main family is very wholesome, very squeaky clean, like the Jetsons or some kind of old classic sitcom family, Saturday morning serial type thing. And the world around them is cynical and corrupt and really too much. And so they kind of took their normal thing and flipped it in that way. With Speed Racer, first of all, the racing scenes are excellent. And you see their influence throughout a lot of current films. I just watched Ready Player One. The beginning of the movie's got this fantastic car chase, but that's similar to the Speed Racer car chase, which the cars can jump, they can flip, they can do backwards and forwards. By the time we get to the final race, which is bananas. I mean, it's like 2001: A Space Odyssey by way of Saturday morning serial cartoons. I mean, it's just, literally the end of it, he's going through a pure tunnel of light. It's mind-bending, it's psychedelic. And I think people really hated it at the time because the visuals were seizure-inducing. It was too much digital shit. It was all CGI crap. But now that pretty much every movie that's over $100 million that comes out looks like that, now that they've all kind of borrowed that style, it's not as jarring as it once was. And I like how a lot of times the background is one thing, and then in the front is people talking to the camera, and they're swishing and they're swirling back and forth. They're layering in different scenes, which makes it feel like a comic book, makes it feel like a Saturday morning cartoon show, which is the vibe that they're going for. They create a fully enmeshed world, candy-colored. I still wouldn't call Speed Racer a good movie, but I think the fact that it's a notorious flop, I mean, people put it in that list with Waterworld and, Cleopatra, movies that lost a shitload of money, that everybody hates, that are not good. But I recently rewatched it with my young son, who's crazy about cars. I mean, he loves loves Hot Wheels, he loves cars, he loves racing, he's all about cars, and he went nuts for it and bananas. And I think that was who they were really trying to speak to, is that inner 5-year-old boy inside all of us. And this corrupt racing world, I mean, there's a scene where they're talking about the stock market and how racing's all fixed and it's all about stock prices, which is kind of heady material for a family rated thing or whatever. But I think they're trying to get at how the adult world and the focus on profits and monopolies and things, it keeps eating away at the inner child that we think is decent and good and wholesome and honest in the world. And Speed Racer's got to fight for all those things, and he's got to do it. And it may be a little corny, it may be a little naive, but I mean, most Saturday morning cartoon shows that we grow up with, they don't age that well. The older we get, we're more cynical or whatever. And I think by trying to speak to that primal, honest instinct, they made something interesting. And I think a lot of big Marvel movies and a lot of current movies that are in theaters, I don't think are interesting in any kind of way. They have no point of view, they have no message beyond that. And so to watch a movie like Speed Racer, it almost feels like a throwback. It almost feels like they've made a high-tech version of a 60s movie that has real ideals and real values and is trying to get across a message out there. And I have to think that maybe if you watch it, you'll see something different than you would have 10 years ago. I've watched it when I first moved to New York. The first time, I moved into New York 3 separate times. This was 2008. This time only lasted a month. I got a job that I thought was going to be great, but it was a fucking boiler room on Wall Street that didn't even pay me anything. They wanted a commission, and the boss was very greedy. He asked me to move up there, and I didn't have a place to live, so I was constantly moving around. There was 3 different apartments that I lived in over a month time period. The people seemed kind of rude, kind of nasty, and so when I saw Speed Racer, it didn't really speak to me in any kind of way. Like, I kind of watched it, and 10 minutes later I forgot about it, but I thought about it over the years, and I think that it made me feel better in that 2 hours and 15 minutes that it played. It spoke to a more innocent, more honest part, and when I was really kind of not vibing with the city. Now, the second time I moved to New York was a lot better. The third time was fantastic. So you get used to it, and you know all that vibe, but I think it can speak to people in that same way. It's currently available on Netflix, so if you'd like to watch it again and see if you see something different, check it out. And a lot of Wachkowski brothers movies. Might want to check them out again and see if they're better than the critics say or that other people say. See if they're better than you think they are.